According to BMW, this X2 M35i is not an SUV, but in fact an SAC, otherwise known as a Sports Activity Coupe. What does that mean though? Sounds like a load of marketing waffle to me. So let's drive it on some real and very British roads and see what this amalgamation of parts is about, eh? My name's Tom and you're watching Paragon Cars. Let's go. Powertrain up first. This has the B48 inline 4-cylinder engine with 306 horsepower and 450 Nm of torque. That power goes to all four wheels via a front-wheel drive based xDrive system that also has what BMW call a M Sports differential up front that supposedly has Torsen-like capabilities. We shall see about that one. But first though, let's see what this Sports Activity Coupe can do on the 30 to 70 sprint. Right, we did a time of 4.74 seconds, which, whilst fast, is not quite up there with the most similarly powered hot hatches. Why? Well, that's because of the activity part of the name. You see, making a car higher adds more metal, which means more weight. This thing is over 200 kilos heavier than a VW Golf R. I know, ouch. At least you do have a higher ride height though, so you can go over those weird split speed bumps with confidence. Coming to the interior, you get pretty standard BMW stuff from this generation. I do like, however, that physical buttons are still the main theme here though. It's much better than the newer touchscreen nonsense in my opinion. You also get some pretty cool looking sports seats which do add a nice bit of flair to the front of the cabin. Moving to the back though, you'll notice there's not really a whole lot of room for adults, which isn't exactly ideal when you consider a VW Golf R or Mark IV Coupe Leon can comfortably fit 6-foot-tall adults in the rear. It's almost as if hatchbacks were already a good thing. I do like the ambient lighting, however, though. Plus, you do get a armrest with cup holders that stay out the way when not in use, and some new USB-C ports for current devices, so it's not all that bad. The boot is also pretty good. You get a 12-volt socket, shopping hooks, and seats that not only fold down, but don't get stuck on the way down either. Oh, and the space is very hatchback-like, unsurprisingly. Okay, enough interior waffle. Let's drive this thing and see if we can keep up with the traditional hot hatch there. Okay, the X2 M35i, or the XPOO 35i as a lot of journalists called it. What's it like? Well, initial impressions driving it around town. Steering is... it's very It's very obviously a front-wheel drive based all-wheel drive system. You can really feel that there's a lot of stuff connected to the steering mechanism, and yeah, there's not a lot of feel basically. Suspension is pretty stiff, going over bumps. It controls its mass well, but it is quite stiff. That's one thing you do notice. It's very Mini-like, unsurprisingly. I wonder why that is. But it's not bad. It's not bad. It does feel sporty, I'll give it that. Then this gearbox, it's not the ZF8 speed, unfortunately. So you're kind of left with, well, it's just a worse gearbox. It's basically not as good. But we'll put it through its paces later and see what it's like on shift times and stuff like that. For going around town though, it feels okay. You do get the odd little sort of jerk from it, but it's nowhere near as bad as a lot of journalists sort of let on. I do find it to be like noticeably less smooth than the ZF8 speed, but like noticeably nowhere near as bad as journalists said it was. Basically, it's not terrible. It's just not the best gearbox in the world. One thing that is good though are the seats. You can get nice and low. Driving position is great. My elbows can reach both armrests. It's actually more It's actually more comfortable than my BMW 1 Series, even though it's kind of like a similar-ish interior. there's just a bit more room for elbows and legs and all that kind of stuff. It does feel weird though, looking at the dash and seeing a BMW M140i dash, but then you realise you're in kind of like a mini SUV thing. It's very strange. Yeah, I can already tell the steering's going to be pretty awful. Unfortunately. Another thing that frickin' sucks, I don't know why BMW did this. They put these frickin' like non-stick down indicators in their cars for a couple of years. Like, what are you doing with that? Why? And like the wipers, okay, you go to put the wipers on and you press up and you're like, oh, I've just blipped it once. And now it's on like, I don't know what setting it's on. Is it on a middle setting or something? And then you press a button for auto. And I know you're going to leave them on auto most of the time, but I do find if you leave them on auto, they will just sometimes wipe the windscreen when there's no water on it. It's like really weird. There's a reason though why they went back to regular indicators. Stop trying to solve problems that don't need solving, BMW. That's what I'll say to that. Anyway, in terms of parking this thing, you know, it might be like a mini SUV thing, but at the end of the day, it's still a pretty small car, so whack it in reverse. Don't have a reverse camera or anything on this, but to be honest, we don't really need it. We can use our wing mirrors to kind of see where the lines are. And we've got plenty of steering angle. We don't have a really short steering rack though. So lock to lock is like just over 2.5 turns, which is not very M Sport car, if you know what I mean. It's more like a sort of a 440i, similar steering to that. But once you're in the space, you know, it's pretty easy to get into one. It's a fairly squarish shape. Getting out is easy. I mean, look at the amount of room we got. Huge amounts of room. And the doors feel pretty solid to me. Everything feels pretty chunky. I don't know if that's just because it's like a sort of SUV, so there's just physically more car. But it definitely feels a bit more solid and better built than some BMWs of old. But yeah, for pootling around town, absolutely fine. Fairly quiet, fairly subdued. Nothing too crazy. Then coming out of junctions in comfort mode, we've got start stop off because everyone hates that. Give it half throttle and your X-Drive system comes into play, and yeah, it just goes basically. It's like a VW Golf R, hooks up, pings you down the road, and just does what you want. Come rain or shine, which is great. It's definitely better at getting out of junctions than the rear-wheel drive BMW M-Lights, I will say that. Right, MPG wise, we're going to test the MPG today, see what kind of miles per gallon we can get on the motorway and a little bit of town driving. So we will quote the combined figure, which is 40 miles per gallon for this car, so just over 40 miles per gallon. So hopefully we can get that. Although having said that, 40 MPG for a 2-litre engine, it's okay. And that's their quoted figure, so we're probably not going to do that, in all honesty. Anyway, before we do that test and conclude it, let's do the first part of the combined cycle test, which is a bit of town driving, and, well, a bit of sporty driving, really. Get this thing on a roundabout, get the traction control off, get it in sports, and have a little flavour of what the handling's like. Alrighty then, let's go for sports. We don't have Sports Plus in this, even though it's an M-Light. Bit strange, but we still have a physical button for traction control, which is what we love. Get the gearbox in sports mode as well, so we'll drop a couple of gears, then we can go for manual. The valve opens in the exhaust, so we get a couple of little pops, which is nice. And wait, there's van to go past first, and let's just get our foot down. Oh, horrific fake noises coming from the exhaust there. And the gearbox gives you a right old shunt in the back when you change gears. That is a very strange experience. You can actually hear the speaker vibrating because of the amount of fake noise coming into the cabin. Is there anything coming from the outside? Not really. Can't hear a lot. Anyway, let's go back into comfort, or actually let's go for eco now, so we can really eke out every single miles per gallon figure. See what we can manage. But yeah, I mean, going around the roundabout, it felt okay. Didn't feel amazing though. We'll get it on some faster stuff later though, and I'm sure it'll try and redeem itself. But for now, it's kind of like fake noise, steering's not that great, doesn't really push you around the corners, it kind of just goes around corners. But it's still early on in the review. It might do better later. For now though, let's get ourselves on the motorway and see what kind of MPG we can manage, and also see what this car's like on the motorway. The suspension feels pretty bouncy around town. Is it going to be even worse when we get onto a motorway? And is there going to be a lot of road and wind noise? Let's find out. Okay, taking this thing onto the motorway. In Eco, it definitely deadens the throttle quite a bit. Not as bad as Audis do though. If you still give it a little prod, it wakes up a little bit. There is definitely a bit more lag though in the turbo. It's trying to just save you a bit of fuel, I think. But seems okay. Still plenty of torque. I mean, 450 newton meters is loads, really. That's the same as a B58 in a BMW 540i, so plenty of torque. Then once you're on the motorway, you've got cruise control, whack it on 70. And it's a very civilised car, actually. Very little road noise, almost zero wind noise. I'm guessing that's because of the kind of egg-like shape. And visibility is pretty good. Suspension is actually quite nice. It's fairly settled. Not too bumpy, but still feels sporty. Interesting. Clearly, it's one of those cars that you have to drive a little bit quicker to really feel where it's kind of calibrated. But it feels nice, actually. Yeah, you could easily do like 6-7 hours in this thing, no problem. Nice and quiet, no rattles or squeaks. What a difference. That's really strange. Alright, if you buy an X2 M35i, just drive it 70 miles an hour everywhere. And it becomes much better. What happens though if we slow down a bit and then plant our foot? Okay, downshifts a couple of gears pretty quickly and responds alright, I'd say. That's not far off of a ZF8 speed. The only thing I do notice is that it's not as smooth, it doesn't really blend the gears together as much. It kind of feels like someone that's not that good in a manual car is the way I'd describe it. Fast, but not that smooth. Anyway, let's get ourselves onto the M25 now and see what kind of MPG we can manage there. M25 traffic things, we are going to come off slightly earlier than usual. However, we've still done 33.2 mpg, and that figure's climbing like rapidly. So yeah, I reckon on a long journey you might actually get 40 miles per gallon out of this thing, which, you know, I do know it's a smaller engine, and you know, an M140i or a 440i will do 40 mpg, but it's a bigger, like physically larger car than some of those cars, so there's, you know, it's just pushing more air, so it's okay. Obviously I'd want it to do better, but it's done alright. Anyway, let's get ourselves onto a proper B-road now, get ourselves back in sports and have some proper fun. Alrighty then, let's see what this car is really made of. It's sort of like 3,000 to 4,000 RPM shifts are actually quite nice. Okay, front end's pretty tidy. Where's the grip limit at? Ooh, okay. Still a bit of BMW DNA in there. Then planting your foot out of corners. Horrible fake sounds. And a very aggressive gear shift. But that felt alright, you know. Steering's still not that good. Like, there's like weight there, and I know what the car's doing, but there's no like feel to it, if you know what I mean. Alright, get to 100-yard marker, whack on the brakes. Yeah, brakes are nice actually. They have a slightly nicer biting point than some of the older M Sport cars do. This is where it's not going to sound good though. Yeah. It sounds like a 2-litre inline 4-cylinder engine. Colour me surprised. With an exhaust though, I think, you know, you'd have some noise out of it. It's fine. When you're going fast though, it handles pretty nicely. Inspires a bit of confidence, rear end moves around a bit. Not bad. Not bad at all. You know, if I was to compare this to something like an Audi SQ2, there's definitely a bit more dynamism in the chassis. Yeah, the SQ2 kind of just, it understeers a bit. You can get it sideways, but you really have to be going for it. Whereas this is kind of just a little bit more playful, I think. Good response from the engine as well. Oh my god, those gear shifts are stupidly aggressive. It literally rocks your head backwards and forwards. Yeah, it's only when you're higher up in the rev band it does it, but that is, if they've programmed it to do that, to me it just feels like I'm in a manual car and I'm flat shifting. It's really bad. I don't know, some people kind of like that stuff, but I prefer it to just kind of like smoothly blend into the next gear. You know, have a nice short, sharp like snap to it. Whereas this is kind of just like, it feels really overly aggressive. Oh. Right, let's see what the torque is like. So go from third gear, because this is where the B58 previous engine was good. Get your foot down. Yeah, it's still pretty good, you know. Sorry, those gear shifts are dumb. It's really overly engineered to do that. Response is good though, so like even if I slow down right, 60 miles an hour, 6th gear, torque comes in basically straight away. Response from the gearbox, not too bad. Could be better though. Oh, there was a little overrun then. A little one. Nothing too crazy though. But yeah, that's like, it's actually like an 8 out of 10, I'd give that, for some faster roads. It's fun to drive. It's just, you know, if it had slightly more in tune steering and maybe like a differential on the rear, so you could like power slide it a little bit out of corners, because the thing is, when you come off the throttle it'll go sideways pretty easy, but when you floor it there's a definite like, oh, he wants to go fast in a straight line, let's give him all the power to the front wheels, and then it kind of just feels like nothing. It doesn't feel like a hot hatch or a rear wheel drive car then. It just kind of goes. But yeah, actually quite good fun for a small spicy SUV. Will it all fall apart though down a very bumpy British B road with this fairly stiff suspension? Let's go to one now and see how it can handle it. Right, let's see what we can do down here. Is this going to feel like a hot hatch? Bit of a broken fence. The whole car literally leaps forwards when it changes gear. Okay. Feels quite stiff, quite tight, which is nice. Little hop, skip and a jump there. It's not taking away confidence, but it's not giving me too much back. I can drive it quickly. That's the main thing. Okay, can we hit 60 before the corner? Ugh, that was a weird gear change. Whoa, very aggressive. Yeah, easily. Still a fast car. Okay, that van driver has suicidal intentions. Typical white van driver. Okay, suspension, yeah, doesn't always keep you in contact with the ground. Makes for an exciting experience. But I tell you what, you can carry proper speed through the corners in this thing. And coming out, you can really feel the front wheels like hooking up and pinging you down the road. Alright, one last time. I would get that mapped out of the gearbox. It's making me laugh, but it feels like cheap. Yeah, it's probably a quick car though. In all fairness, it's doing well. It's a bit silly. It's not bad. Like coming out of corners like that, it's an absolute missile. Because obviously you just hook straight up. I have to admit, I went into this review preemptively thinking this was going to be an absolute pile of garbage. And whilst it's not like, you know, like the new M135i, the lower down version of this basically, is definitely a better car. I would say that if you're a family and you want something that's a little bit higher up and you need a bigger boot and you just need a bit more room, I think this is a pretty good compromise, you know. It's still loads of fun. Like on a road like that, it's absolutely great. Suspension kind of deals with the bumps all right, but the main thing is it doesn't really scare you, but you can still feel the chassis moving around quite a bit, which you don't get in something like an Audi SQ2 unless you really push the car too much. Whereas this, you can kind of be going at like 8/10 and you feel it moving around, and you know, the control weights are all right. It's not bad. I'd give it like a solid 7 out of 10. But power-wise, very good. Plenty of power to be had. It's kind of like a jack-of-all-trades kind of car, really. But master of none. Anyway, as always, if you enjoy this review, please give us a like, as not only can you see more reviews like this, you can see everything we have for sale, which includes this lovely BMW X2 M35i. There'll be a link down for the car down below. If there isn't, then the car has been sold, you missed it, sorry. But there will also be a link for the generic website as well, where you can see everything else we have for sale. And if I were you, I would be looking for something like a BMW X3 M40i. As good as this car is for the price, I would save a bit more money and get myself a proper SUV with a 6-cylinder B58 engine. Anyway, as always, my name has been Tom, and you have been watching Paragon Cars. I will see you on the next one. Cheers.